Hello, everybody. Welcome to CPS. There's an amazing bunch of prints up there on the wall to have a look at, but let's just sit down and we'll have a look at them a bit later. Looks like a couple of new faces that I haven't seen for a while, so welcome. If you're some visitors, it's suddenly gone all dark, so there's no point in showing me your hands of who's visitors. But there were some new faces, so make a point of saying hello to somebody new if you haven't seen them before. And for those of you who I haven't met, I'm Ian. I'm the MC tonight, but I'm also the president. So come and say hello and enjoy having a look around at CPS. We've got a good program tonight. That's going to be new and fresh, since it's all about C graders, and C grades a good chance to see some different views on the world. But before we go, a couple of notices. First of all, can you make sure you turn your cell phones off? I just remembered to do mine. I usually wait till the end, or it hasn't actually rung on me yet, but it will sometime. So just switch it into the silent mode and beware of where the exits are. There's an exit either side of the stage and back through the door. You can also get out onto the back area, but predominantly we want you to go back out the front door for a collection area if anything untoward happens. That aside, a couple of news items. First of all, welcome to those of you streaming, and I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to go welcome to Ferg. Some of you have been here a while will remember Ferg Campbell, who was a PSNZ member for ages and ages, super active guy, and he left when his world fell apart during the earthquake, however long. He came from Dunedin, they disappeared back down to Dunedin. I got a phone call from Ferg the other day because he'd stumbled upon a CPS streaming event on YouTube, and he'd enjoyed watching it, and he rang me up and said, "Do you guys stream every week?" And I said, "Yep." "I might join again," said Ferg. So I haven't seen his application yet, but if he doesn't apply within the next week, I'm going to send him a form and tell him to hurry up. He had been a member of Invercargill for the same reason. He lives in Mosgiel and finds driving into Dunedin a bit of a pain in the neck. That's not the words he used, were more vigorous than that, but that was the crux of it. So he had been a member of Invercargill when they were running all their meetings via Zoom, and they've gone back from Zoom to going into a hall, and Ferg was quite intrigued by our sort of hybrid mix that we've got here, where people can watch, they can be part of the competitions, and they can be part of the club without actually coming along. So if anybody's having some doubts about it, that's a really good thing. We're going to carry on doing it, and hopefully we'll be able to say welcome to Ferg when you see some of his pictures shortly. The next little notice is, I got an email the other day from somebody who has a Pentax KX film camera that looks to be in really good nick. He just wants to give it away, and he wants it to go to an enthusiast who's interested in cameras. So if you're interested in picking up a Pentax KX with 3 lenses, come and see me afterwards and I'll forward that on to you. Okay. A little bit about the Spring Workshop series. Me jumping up and down and saying, hey, nobody's enrolled, did the trick. We got inundated with enrolment. That's really good. So the numbers are all solid and they're all going to happen. We could still there are still some spaces, in particular in the creative and street workshops on the 7th, 8th of October. The bird workshops are pretty much full, so that's gone really well. Steve Atwood is going to do a good job of those, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes, and he's quite keen to run a couple more. He's got some other ideas for bird workshops next year, so that might be something we have a bit of a look at later on. So if you're still interested in coming to one of the Spring Workshop series, slots are still there. Go on the website and click the green button and enroll. Next one. I also got an email from PSNZ the other day, well, there's 2. The one that I'm going to forward to everybody is a bit of a promo for them, describing what they do and what the benefits in being an individual PSNZ member are. So I think that the intent is that goes out to all members. We are, by by being an affiliated club, you sort of get some second-hand membership by just being a member of CPS, but there are other benefits of being a full member of PSNZ, and I will email you tomorrow the thing that they've sent with a bit of an advertising blurb, basically. The second one from PSNZ talks about the National Portrait Salon, which is a competition that's been run by the Tauranga Photographic Society, and that finishes on the 30th of September. So they have two categories for portraits. One they're calling portrait, which is portraits of people, and one is portrait open, which can be horses, insects, don't know what else, open, anything you want. John? They held it last year, but it was just a teething exercise thing. They just were feeling their way. They didn't push it really hard, but they were happy with it. And so this is it's a relatively new one. So it's all about portraits. And if you're a portrait photographer, it's a good opportunity to support it. I think it was $20 an entry, and you can enter 4. But after you've entered, the maximum you have to pay is $40. So you can enter 2 or 4 for the same price. Anyway, go online to the PSNZ website. In fact, I'll email this as well, so there'll be a link you can click directly if you're inclined to join that. Okay, before we go on with the C grade competition, I'm going to get Alistair up to introduce those amazing pictures.
Thanks, Ian. Tonight we are really privileged to have a selection of John Suckling's artwork, and I emphasise the word art. They're not just pictures, they're artworks. They're awesome. John specialises in black and white and monochrome type images. A lot of them are very architectural, minimalist images. John's been with the club for around about 15 years now, and he runs some tutorials through there, and that a lot of us have been to. And when we go out and about, we start to see the world entirely differently because of John. We see triangles, we see squares, we see rectangles, we see circles, and we become more in tune with composition and perspective and all the rest. So I'll hand it over to John, and he can give us a wee bit of a talk about his images. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. I don't want to bore you because you've seen a lot of these digital versions of these, but it's far from a portfolio. All I did was go through stuff that was in various drawers and shelves and so on, and then mounted them on foam board. But it at least covers the broad brush of the sort of things I do. And I'm not sure really what to say about it tonight unless there's some images. Maybe I explain. I see myself as an opportunist photographer. I don't do projects very much. I tend to try and get into an environment, often travelling, and then just keep my eye out for something that interests me, gets my imagination going, and so on. So all of these, if I was to go through every one, I'd be able to tell you the story that I think it's, that the image is about. But I'll just cover some of the broader things and then answer any questions if I've confused you. So the very first image that I took after joining, when I joined, I didn't enter competition. I joined partway through a year, and I decided I wouldn't enter any competitions until the following year. And the first one that I put in was this one here. And I think I got some brownie points from the it got an honours, so I set a high standard for myself to try and keep up. But I think I got some brownie points, not just because of the image, but the judge was thought that I was very fearless getting up on top of that bridge, suspension bridge. And it wasn't a judge that was here, so I couldn't tell them that it has a lift that takes you to the very top. But that was opportunist. I was on holiday. My son had got married in New Hampshire, and we went with him, his new wife, and did some travelling around Maine, which I hadn't been to before. And he said, "Hell, I've never seen this bridge we're just coming up to." And it had only been open about 2 months before we got there, and I wasn't aware of it. But that signifies the sort of photography I do. And I'd only been trying to do more fine art type photography since I joined the club. But as I've said to you before, because I've had a long history in design, interest in design, purely as an amateur, it meant that as soon as I started getting more serious about my photography, then design came through in my photographs. So I've never struggled on what my style is. I know what the style is. It's trying to do it well that's the struggle. So yeah, so that's an example there. This one is the one that I've talked about in tutorials, where in Venice we were there for quite a few days, and I wanted something that was sort of iconic, that people would look at it and know it's Venice, but would think maybe I haven't quite seen an image like that before, because it's so easy to fall into the trap of copying all the brilliant images that some people do there. There's little things that catch my eye, like this is in Worcester Street, and in the pavement, which, as you know, those concrete pavers, obviously it had been rearranged, and this had been a paver that had some line or arrow or something on it and had been put in a different place. So less is more. I thought, right, I can have a go at that. I'm not sure what else to talk about. This one here, when I've been trying, I know what I like in terms of sharp imaging. I like something like this, which is a stainless steel seat near, well, it's now Britomart, but before it was Britomart, and had a building behind it which I cut out and so on. But as I have said to you in some of the tutorials, I like slightly softer images as well, but still with strong design. And so this is actually one which is very grainy, and I've increased the grain on it, is one of my favourites, because when you look at it from a distance, I just get a feeling that could have been 100 years ago in Venice. And I get a little bit of the same feeling when I looking at that as I do when I look at some famous shots, which mine obviously isn't as good, but has a little bit of the feel of famous shots. This is another example of my architectural photography, where I seldom photograph the whole building, because I see that a little bit like photographing a statue or something that's been created. I tend to concentrate on an element that I'm sure was important to the architect, and this is in Glasgow, and it's a transport museum. Some of you may have been there. That Ardid, I think her name is, the woman that died a few years ago, the architect that did very, very abstract designs. And I just liked the way that this is black glass, but not totally black. I just darkened it. How you get the contrast of fairly plain black and then the fine detail on the roof, and particularly liked the small line that goes around here, and also how this anchors it towards the ground. So it's those little sort of details that I like. But this one, for example, I did put in competition, I think last year or the year before, and I couldn't get to the evening when it was commented on, but friends told me that the judge went through it explaining how they liked the rectangle and the circles and so on, and then said, but unfortunately it's not sharp. And I just felt that that's in the tannery, and I just felt that it depicts the idea of maybe in Italy or somewhere like that of a cafe. I don't know what else. This is another example which you've seen when I've done tutorials of Rotorua, and I was determined not to have photos that people would automatically say was Rotorua, but of course it meant that the steam acted the same way as mist does and fog does, where it obliterates some things but emphasises others. So I'm not sure. This is an image that I put here, which is the Tate Modern in London, which I played around with in sepia and softening and so on. And again, last year another judge said, went through and talked about the structure of it with this rectangular block and the triangles here and so on, this line leading in. But the trouble is it's not sharp. So I'm not offended at that at all, but it just means I'm not going to bother putting in ones that I like that are not sharp, even though they're intentionally not sharp. Down here, I don't want to bore you, so I'll be quick, but as some of you know, I was chairman of the Restart Container Mall, and it meant that I had, while we're building it, and all of the centre of the city was still a red zone where people were meant to be going in, I had a pass to go in to work on Restart. And I went past some posters that were weathering a lot and hadn't been taken down because they weren't allowed to go in and put new posters up. So I've done a mini project on that, and these are just two examples of that. And as you know, if you look very closely at a poster, you see it's made up of lots of dots, the printing process of printing a poster. So I took in a tripod and a macro and got really close. So this, from a distance, was an orange colour, and you can see where the paper is flaking and so on. And this is another example of that, where that there is part of a full stop of one poster, and this is another poster put over the top, partly over the top, that was from a distance looked black, but when you got close you saw all the little dots. So they're probably the most extreme of any photos that I've ever done. This is an image in Britomart. If people have been to Britomart, there's a number of, you can't call them totem poles, but I'm not sure what Maori, how they describe them, but they're stained quite dark, almost black, and I simply took a small part of it. So they're round, but this makes it look flat. This is an example of where I enjoy abstracting something that I've seen and concentrating on some of the detail that's there. And it's one of my favourites. On that theme of triangles, this here was in Winchester in the UK, and we were just having a look at the cathedral there, and in front of the cathedral there are a number of bollards. This is a wooden post, triangular shaped wooden post to stop cars getting in too close to the cathedral. And as I walked past it, said to my wife Jan, "Can you give me 2 minutes?" And this is a stainless steel plate that is on top so that the weather doesn't get into the grain. And I thought it just looks a little bit like a face to me. So this is one of the very few that I've taken where there's no single focus of interest. And I've spoken before about how in New Hampshire, we've been there once in fall or autumn, and I was just totally overwhelmed, not being a landscape photographer, and didn't get many shots that I enjoyed. But that one I did because it's really about texture and effect. There's no single focus of interest there. This is another one in colour though that, again in Venice, where I loved the architectural shapes and the greenish colour here as against the reddy orange up there. But I also liked how the downpipe had broken there and was causing this slime here to, there's a little dip. So that's how my weird brain works, is that it has to be something that's a little bit different. As in this one, which I think I've talked about before, which is simply a log in the gardens here in Christchurch, where that's the end of the log, and this is actually where the log's been cut in half, and the weather has bleached the colour out of the top part. And as some of my friends say, it's a little bit like a landscape with a tree in there, which is what I'd seen, but I take perspective out of a lot of images to make them more abstract. I'd love to be a painter or draw, but I'm no good. So I start with something I see and then try and make it more abstract, a little bit more arty if I can. Is there any others there that you want me to comment on? No, well, that's fine. But just keep your eyes peeled when you're walking around. This is an example, this one, of in Oxford, in one of their museums there. There's a basement area, but at the level above it is made up of a mesh more than a mesh, but a pattern of metal. And I just thought, that looks good, and I liked how the light was catching the bits that were worn the most, which are these brighter bits here. And so I had a go at that, yeah. And this was an example visiting the Apple shop in New York. Has anyone been there? Yeah, so it's all glass on a plinth in the front of a building, isn't it? And I thought, I have to have a photo of this. This was soon after it opened, I don't know, 10, 12, whatever years ago, and was struggling. And then as I was about to walk up the glass stairs, someone conveniently paused, and I was able to get a shot looking straight up. So I think I do a little bit, very little bit of street stuff. So I put them in as examples of that. So I really look at opportunities. So thank you.
Hey. That's spectacular. I think I've seen all of those pictures at some stage or other, and I found it really interesting that John said he's not project orientated, but when you see a body of work like that, you go, rubbish. Seemed project orientated to me. It's really good. Thank you very much, John. Really appreciated that. Okay, now we'll get on to the main part of the evening, which is the C grade presentation. So I'm going to hand over to the wondrous C graded managers, bosses, leaders.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, secretary is the word, apparently. Nicola and I were talked into doing that role at the end of last year by Jo Curtis, who happens to be this evening's judge. She is our past president and is now a member, as we all know. And she's known for her triptychs and her creative work, but we were really, I was actually really impressed with her judging. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Nicola, who's going to read this evening. We've got 28 images for the projected and 4 prints.
Sorry.
4, not me. 4 prints over there. So we're just going to run straight through projected prints and then present the images. Thank you.
I think on behalf of Jane and I, we're really proud of you guys for putting these in too. Well done.
Yes.
Score 2, displaying dahlia colours with ICM. You have created a delightful symphony of colour, dancing over my screen. Here you are showing me something familiar in a different way. This image was set to score highly, and then I saw the dust spots. Once seen, they destroy the image. Please tidy these up and resubmit, as this is a beauty. Shag Pile Rock. The great stern post making the way to the estuary. The vertical frame gives this diminishing rock pile some height still. You lead me up to the top, over many of the other footprints to the two birds perched on the top. It's a popular landmark. Rendering in black and white works well for this image. As there is one smooth rock that has more lighting, it holds my attention. In my opinion, I would like to see more light on the upper pinnacles to take me all the way up, not just stay at the midpoint. Play with contrast or brushes and see if that improves the image for you. The contrast of the smooth sand and the textured rocks works well. Refueling time. Airfields are always busy places. You have captured 3 groups of people going about their business of readying the planes. In my opinion, a tighter crop will allow me to see your intention straight away. I suggest you crop off the right plane and clone out the wingtip. This plane adds nothing to the activity you are showing me. Also, the white body in the distance is distracting for me. Then crop out most of the sky, as it isn't necessarily in your narrative. What do you think? Does that work better for you? Chimpanzee. This is a magnificent animal. It is a gorilla. Be careful when deciding on your title for your image. When they're outside their enclosure, you have the ability to follow them until a pleasing competition arises. I see your subject has a pole rising out of its head and a branch out of its mouth. I suggest you wait till your subject is separated from distractions. You are directing me to look at the grass because it's in focus. Did you use manual or autofocus? Either way, it needs to be on the subject. Because the creature is local, you can go back and connect with it again. Reaching out. The dead limbs are reaching out. They are placed well in the frame. To be at the competition level, the subject in this case, in my opinion, needs to be in focus. They appear out of focus to me. The colour of the foreground grass looks summery, which may be why the background is a hazy blue. I suggest you have a play with editing tools to make this more realistic. Last rose. The blemishes are beginning to show on this last rose. It has displayed beautiful colour while it was blooming. In my opinion, in capturing this close-up, F8 or F9 may have suited better. Only limited edges on this rose are sharp. The yellow looks forced on my screen. I wonder if a more square crop would suit this image too. This would eliminate the bright circles of distraction in the right top corner. What do you think? Early cherry blossom. Good that you're out there with your camera as these early blossoms appear. This image doesn't look sharp to me. Perhaps you've cropped it tightly. What is your intention with the negative space to the left of the subject? Where is the iron? An action shot in a public place. These are tricky to make. This image certainly has interest value and shows an activity I don't see every day. So there is some intrigue with this image, and it holds my attention while I attempt to work out the backstory. It is a PJ, and the elements are cluttered. If only you'd moved to the left a little, his hand would have been better balanced in the frame, and the billboard and security post would have been better placed too. Winter hydrangea. This is certainly how the hydrangea looks in the winter. Your narrow field of focus brings me right to the exhausted flower. Great that you have singled one out from the huge branch. And the result is I can see the stages of decomposition in its fading beauty. My suggestion is to lighten this image, as it is a celebration of the stages these plants go through each year. There is joy in this. You have allowed me to see its environment. Another suggestion is to crop from the left to eliminate the upright stalk of the other flower head. Leave your flower in the thirds and darken the brown flower on the right side, as it's too close to the edge of the frame. I don't want anything to distract me looking at your flower. How does it look with these changes? Water buffaloes. A great place to photograph water buffalo. In the water, the image shows them in their environment, albeit fenced in. The animals have good separation between each beast, and they are balanced well in the frame, in my opinion. The distraction I see in this image are the repetitive lines at the top of the image, the fence patterns. They take my view away from the subject. I suggest you crop from the top to eliminate this fence. Does that give it a better composition and allow you to concentrate on the animals? Plenty of nectar for all. It does look as though the tui is chasing the bee from its nectar. That would have been a great moment to behold. In order for this image to reach competition level, the Pahutakawa flowers and the tui would need to be in focus, in my opinion. When capturing moving objects that you want in focus, the speed of your camera needs to be between 1600 and 2000 as a guide. This image has no data with it for me to be of any more specific. Head held high. The tui is a magnificent creature, which you have seen. In my opinion, not enough of this bird is in focus. No image data comes with this for me to suggest changes to your settings when you're next out there capturing these birds. The feather on its neck is sharp, and little else. Depending on how close this bird is to you, I suggest next time you up the f-stop number for more depth of field. This may look good in a square frame with not much as a white background at the top of the frame. Isn't it always a joy to have these creatures so close? A hint of sun. Isn't it great to be at the pier at the break of day, and you're there before the lights are turned off? These lights add to the joy of seeing the sun colour appearing. Your image hasn't come with data, so I'll wing my suggestions. The horizon is not level. This is always a technical aspect that needs to be correct when horizons show in images. The image looks soft to me. Did you use a tripod? Because you don't have much light to work with at this time of the day, a higher ISO may have smoothed that noise I can see in the sky. There are many CPS members who enjoy an early start to the day out there. To assist you, going there with an experienced member who can guide you would be a good idea. Heron with a crabby tongue. It's always good to see these birds feeding, and to see the food in the image is even better. It appears this image has been cropped too tightly and is very pixelated. You use speed 800. I suggest you use 1600 to 2000 for moving objects, and creep up on them so you're much closer, or wait for them to come past you. Flight of the spoonbills. I see your attempt to create a narrative around this composite. This must be a fun activity. For it to work for me, it needs to be seamless. To look fantasy real, you have some fabulous spoonbill shapes to work with. The foggy air with a touch of colour is magical. Black and white leaves. These are black and white leaves, with an interesting splay of background fusion. In my opinion, the out of focus foreground limits my view of your subject. Try that again without the foreground distraction. Score 3, Leg Shackles in Abandoned Jail. Thank you for this title. I would not have known what the subject was otherwise, and it also explains to me why the image is so dark. It is a dark subject from a dark time. It gave me a shiver when looking at the detail you have recorded. Castle Hill, last light before the snow. A moment later, and this lovely light would have left these rocks. Well caught. The parallel lines of the foreground rocks and background snowy ridge works to enhance drama and strength into this frame. Plenty to explore in these foreground rocks. Once I saw the dark bird-like shape with a lit-up beak resting in that valley to the left of the frame, I found it distracting. My suggestion would be to lighten the valley and darken the beak so I stay exploring these sunny rocks and shadows. Autumn colour, a great splash of autumn colour, both on the tree and in the water. The subject is framed by the two dark trees. A sun-drenched tussock adds to a triangle design I see. For me, this creates a pleasing rhythm. Settled in the land. Good on you for stopping at this historic Otago dwelling. Tricky to pull over at this location too. In my opinion, you've certainly captured the subject settled on the land. One suggestion I have is to crop a little off the top so as to eliminate that light rock on the left and the light spots of plants on the right. I find them distracting, being so close to the edge of the frame. What do you think? The tussock path leads me up to the front door, and you've edited the lighting on the dwelling to invite me in. Harira Sophia. We're farewelling this plane. It makes sense to have it leaving the scene, well caught as it lifts from New Zealand soil for the last time. Poolburn Huts. The Poolburn Huts are a fascinating collection of build-ups and build-ons, aren't they? You've caught just the right moments with the huts highlighted like this to keep my attention on your subject. Pleasant to be there in still conditions, to have added bonus of a colourful reflection. Distinction Hotel, Christchurch in New Zealand. This is an interesting exercise in design, line, shape, texture, perspective. It is well lit, and the black and white rendering works well. My eyes swing back and forth, up and down the levels. Maybe that's your intention. It is not clear to me where you want me to look. For instance, if there was a person at one of the windows, or one window box was coloured, I'd know what you were showing me. Score 4, Rakaya Winter, Purple Hour, Brian Habertle. Oh, whoop. You have made this commanding scene into a celebration of colour, from the contrasting textures to the mix of warm and cool tones on the land. The 25-second exposure has allowed you to stretch the clouds to create, in my opinion, an ethereal mood, just enough to still have the emerging stars dot through. This time of light is definitely captivating. Mount Sunday, Hakateri. Brian, in these competitions, we don't add our names to the image, just so you know that for next time. You chose the right day to go up there. I have stayed beside the stream for some time, admiring the scene you have captured. The clear, crisp air and grandeur of the atmosphere, accentuated by the snowdrop few days ago. Snow always makes a scene magical for me. Your composition is great in that I travel up the stream to the snow caps in the distance, then back down that ridge to start over again. You positioned yourself well to make this image. Rotorua mud pool, the moment of explosion, well caught with the fast shutter speed. The soft steam contrasts well with the aggressive shapes of flying mud. In my opinion, this image is well composed to the thirds to give me a balance, with the finer, less focused points of interest in the environment, well proportioned as a natural history image too. Tulip Trio. The solid black background works well to set off the elegance of these 3 tulips. They are gracefully displayed. The lighting allows their silky shine to show. In my opinion, you have enhanced the visual design of this arrangement with the vertical framing. The long stems appear to be stretching the buds skywards. Half red crest circle, score 5. This image stood out as the most striking right from the start of my viewing. It has impact. If C grade had a best in show, this would be it. The slow shutter speed has enabled you to capture the curved moment. The colour is alive with energy. It is a strong and simple composition. It fits well within the frame. The author has been creative in making this image, showing me something I haven't seen before. And we're moving straight on to the C grade prints. Score 3, golden light. How wonderful to be at a reservoir to witness this golden light. The shadows move so quickly at this time of the day. The crib and the outhouse have just enough light to make them the feature. In my opinion, the waiting black-backed gull is a distraction as it's so close to the edge of the print. I suggest a tighter crop. From the right, to crop out the island the gull stands on, then from the left to the dip in the background skyline rocks, and again from the bottom to keep the golden water, not the blue. Then the crib in front of the magnificent rocks you've captured will really be the feature of this image. Bathed in this golden light, the print is produced and matted well. Score 3. Dahlia head with water drops. This dahlia head certainly stands out like a starburst with the solid black background. The water drops make it feel fresh. All the petals are in focus, which can be a challenge with close-up images. It appears you have photographed this in harsh light. This has led to a few blown out patches in the lighter tones of yellow and white. I suggest next time use a filter of some kind to soften the light. The flower is static, so a longer shutter speed will work with less light. The positioning almost centre works for me with the uplifting energy of the flower head. The print is produced and matted well. Score 4, clutter. This rural general store is cluttered. This is a great subject for a print, as close examination reveals so many treasures. My eye travels around the shelves and up into the rafters. I do want to read all the writing, and I can't as the depth of field does not allow. If you ever have the opportunity again to go there, I suggest you increase to F9 or F11, or even stack to gain all that detail. It certainly is a world of discovery in there. The print is produced and matted well. Score 5, blue hour. The moon over the ocean at blue hour. This image gives me a sense of timelessness, as the moon is so sharp and secure and is always up there. What I haven't seen captured before is a sharp moon with the motion of water as you've presented it. The misty areas of the horizon join the two. In my opinion, this is a strong composition and you have been creative in joining the two elements. This holds my attention, and I can feel the wash of those waves. The print is produced and matted well.
And to present the awards tonight, Diana's going to come. So first award goes to Leg Shackles in Abandoned Jail by Penelope McCall. Next is Castle Hill, Last Light Before the Snow by Kelly Haybittle. Autumn Colour by John McCall. Settled in the Land by Penelope McCall. Harera Sophia by Pip Corlett. Paul Byrne Huts by John McCall. Distinction Hotel by, Francesca Davies. Rakaya Winter, Purple Hour by Brian Haybittle. And Mount Sunday Hakateri by Brian Haybittle. Rotorua Mudpool, Kelly Haybittle. Tulip Trio by Jan Boak. And Half Red Crest Circle by Timothy. Sorry, Timothy, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce your name. Gostomski. Is he here? No. Right, and now on to the prints. Golden Light by John McCall. And Clutter by John McCall. And we have Daily Head with Water Drops and Blue Hour by Jan Boak. Well done, everybody. Thank you very much for entering, you C graders. Good job.
Yeah, special thanks to Jane and Nicola for running the show, because those C-grade images were pretty impressive, I'd have to say. I do quite a lot of judging throughout the, for other clubs as part of the PSNZ accredited judging process. And I'd have to say, if you look at C-grade that comes to CPS, it's really heartening, because those images were amazing. When they first started, popped up and there was score 2, I was going, holy moly, if this was in any other clubs A grade, they'd be getting, acceptances plus. So the level of work of those C grades are really, really good, and you need to be applauded. Just another slight explanation that's worth having. You'll notice on those of you who've got awards, have got commended or highly commended on them. It's a slight oddity that C grade works. We don't use the accepted and honours and all those other grades, because the C grade competition is not intended to be part of the overall, open competition for the rest of the year. So the idea being that you can try these off and then you can put them forward. If you get an acceptance in one of the open competitions, then you can't tweak them and put them back in and do what the judge says. The whole idea of the C grade is to work on these images and the comments that you've got, but quite a few of those you'd just be able to put them straight in and open and get an honours anyway, so well done, really awesome. Closing dates for things coming up shortly. Next week, September the 14th, PI number 9. The week after, September the 21st, print number 5. And then the week after that, the set challenge, that's September the 28th. So just a few things to get yourself thinking about and ready to move forward with in the next little bit. I'd also like to emphasise that next week's a bit of an unusual one in that the hall's not available to us. It's part of the deal with the community church that they need to use it from time to time. So there's no tutorials, no meeting, nothing next week, unfortunately. So we'll miss out on one before we come back the week after. So I just want to finish off by first of all, before the thank yous, just a couple of requests. We're starting to think about moving forward to next year, thinking about next year, and it's about 2 months, pretty much close to today, when we're going to be having the AGM and starting to set up the committees and structure for next year. There's a couple of jobs that we need to get filled, and I just want people to start thinking about it. The first one is we want to get an overall coordinator for the 7 o'clock sessions. That doesn't mean you need to be the person that's sort of doing everything or running around chasing stuff. Alistair's pretty happy to still help doing some stuff like that, but we do want an overall person who's in charge, person who's the one-of coordinator of the 7 o'clock session. So if you think you'd like to be involved in helping coordinate and put those together, then come and have a chat. And the other person that we really need on the committee for next year is a vitally important person, and the role of this person is primarily to boss me around and make sure I do things properly. We need a secretary. And there is a really comprehensive book on how to be a secretary and how to do things properly, and there's a constitution to follow, and there's all that sort of stuff. I'm useless at following those little silly rules. I just like to wing things, so I need somebody to keep ringing up and hassling me to do it properly and to be a secretary. So if you think you're the sort of person who's got some secretary skills, and we're not looking for anything out of the moon here, just somebody who's keen to follow process and knows what's happened and is quite willing and able to boss me around, I'm looking for a secretary, so come and have a chat afterwards. Okay, that's the conclusion of tonight. I just want a couple of thank yous. Dennis for opening and organising the 7 o'clock tutorial, and James and Diane for the discussions. I'm not sure if they're still here, but that seemed to looked like it went reasonably well. On the sound, the boys up in the back, Andrew and Wayne, well done, thank you, and good for the live stream, so hopefully we'll get Ferg back on board. Projection, there's Alistair, thank you again for that. And supper tonight? Is there supper tonight? No, he's not here, so or just have a chat, but have a look. Good chance to have a look at the pictures. Well, thanks again to John for bringing those pictures. It's a really good chance to do that. So once again, not next week, but we'll see you the week after. Thank you very much.